good to have you with us in this edition of the Urban Debate. Because as a nation, as we grapple with the COVID catastrophe, as we all unite to help out our friends, colleagues, loved ones, sometimes even those we don't know, as people in this country run from pillar to post, from trying to get a COVID test report to then waiting for the test to be done and the report to come, from trying to get an oxygen bed, an ICU bed, getting an oxygen cylinder, getting the right drugs which the doctors have prescribed. You don't know what is needed or not needed. You will go as per the prescription given to you by your doctor. And as we struggle to get this for our loved ones, as we talk about the shortages, as we question the authorities on the planning, there is one extremely key aspect that I want to address tonight. These are crimes against humanity. I have no other way of addressing this. Crimes against humanity, vultures, the worst kind of the criminals who are trying to make money out of your and my pain, who are trying to take us for a ride and are managing to do so in many cases. Because we are desperate and we will take whatever comes along at whatever cost we can afford to pay. There are people in this country who have no conscience, are only thinking about making money, and are selling us fake drugs, fake vials of injections, fake oxygen cylinders, are promising us critical health care, are promising us beds, are promising us plasma, are taking our money and running away. And the worst kind really is those who are selling these fake drugs and fake oxygen cylinders. These are things needed to save lives tonight. And people who indulge in this kind of racketeering and profit, scamsters, worst kind of fraudsters, are essentially committing murder. And that is what they need to be punished for. Let me give you a few examples in case you haven't heard, though I think that's highly unlikely. Here is one of the most shocking examples. In our national capital, a gang was busted, 3 people arrested, for selling fire extinguishers as oxygen cylinders. They went to the extent of even painting these extinguishers in such a manner that they look like an oxygen cylinder. 532 extinguishers and the nozzle caps were recovered by the police when they made these arrests. Countless examples of the kind that I'm going to give you right now, where people who are on various WhatsApp groups trying to get help, trying to get oxygen cylinders or drugs, are made an offer, charged an exorbitant price, asked to pay up in advance, digitally transfer the money, and then the person making this promise vanishes. There have been instances from national capital to Haryana where even IDs have been provided to make it seem all genuine. And once the money is transferred, these people just vanish. The number gets deactivated or blocked, and then there is no word from them. Can you imagine that? When people are desperately trying to look for life-saving drugs and oxygen, some people are looting and scamming us in such a manner. Series of information from Lucknow, Delhi, Noida, Satna, doctors, middlemen, providing you facilities, promising you facilities, and then looting you and scamming you. And in most cases, what we have seen is that they get detained, they get booked, they get arrested for a few days, and that's that. Tonight, I want to talk about this and raise a demand on behalf of Mirror Now. We need the authorities to come out and tell us what can be the strictest of the punishment of these criminals against humanity. Just a few months in jail will not do. Some of them are committing crimes akin to murder when these are times of pandemic. What can be done? That's the question I'm asking. We've also opened up our phone lines. If you've been a victim of such a fraud, you can call us up and share your example. The more stories, the bigger the gravity of the situation becomes, and hence maybe our authorities will realize that something needs to be done. We are also opening up our phone lines in case you want to join this demand and raise your voice for tougher punishment. This is not just a conversation about black marketing, viewers. This is about those fraudsters who are promising us life and taking away our money without delivering. I say good evening to the panelists who are joining me on this conversation. Neha Joshi of the BJP, Adil Singh Boparai of the National Congress Party, Sarima Sundaram, Senior Advocate with the Supreme Court, Dr. Vikram Singh, former DGP, joins us this evening. Monica Bharadwaj, DCP with the Delhi Crime Branch, also with us this evening. I actually want to start off with Mr. Sundaram. Mr. Sundaram, what could be the possibilities within the existing law? Or can we look at bringing in tougher legislations to ensure that these guys don't get away easily?
Well, Tanvi, I don't believe we need new legislation. I believe the existing law is good enough for this. And give me a minute while I explain why. You see, something like black marketing and hoarding during a famine and selling in the black market is something as old as the sea. It was done in India 6,000 years, 2,000 years ago, and it will continue being done. It's been there from Chandragupta Maurya's time. That is different. The hoarding and black marketing is a different issue altogether. Here we are not talking about hoarding and black marketing. We're not talking about somebody is holding a cylinder and then giving the cylinder for a higher price. That itself is bad enough and it's terrible at a time of a crisis, and it speaks despicably of the man. But that is not as bad as what we're really finding is happening. If a person is promising you an oxygen cylinder and giving you a fire extinguisher, now by that, he knows that his act is likely to cause your death. And therefore, he is guilty of culpable homicide. And he can be tried, he can be charge sheeted for culpable homicide. And this is not a simple thing as cheating. Similarly, a person who gives this life-saving drug and has it as an MPPL of some other medicine, when he gives it, he knows the person taking it is going to take it because they think that their life is going to be saved. And he knows by not giving it, he is likely to cause the death of that person, or it's likely. That again is a case of culpable homicide. Or the third case, where a person takes your money and says he's giving you an oxygen cylinder and gives you something else, or says that he's giving you the medicine, gives you something else, says he's sending an ambulance and does not do so. Now, these are all matters where it's not just a simple thing of cheating, but acting in a manner that you know that your action or your omission to act is likely to cause the death of that person. And once you have knowledge that your action could cause the death of a person, then it is culpable homicide. And under the existing law, you can be charged for it. And I feel that these people, without a doubt, they should all be charge sheeted for it, and let the law take its course. And let it be proved that these people did so with the knowledge that their action was such that it could result in the death of a person, and yet they did it, in which case let them go to life or prison, let them be treated as anybody else who has committed a dastardly act. And this is far more dastardly when you're using a pandemic for it. Forget it, these are not human beings, but unfortunately they live in our society, but let us deal with them in the strictest way possible. And this is what I'm saying the existing law can take care of.
So you're saying that within the laws, yes, they can be booked for murder or homicide, and the existing laws are enough. But Mr. Sundaram, this isn't really happening on ground. Is there a special instruction that needs to be given out, or a conscious effort that has to be made? Is there hesitance because it will be difficult to prove that these people knew what they're doing could lead to death and they still did this?
I'm sorry. The point is, it is the hesitancy of the authorities to act. Don't forget that when the police wanted to charge somebody, for example, even in that death of the actor, they immediately brought in culpable homicide. They bring in culpable homicide into a car accident and say that you were driving your car when you were drunk. Then you should have known that your action was likely to result in the death of a person. Therefore, it's culpable homicide. So the authorities, well within their knowledge as to what they can do, they know that they can charge these people for culpable homicide. They are aware of it. But for whatever reason, if they don't do it, which is why I'm so glad you're taking up this campaign.
Thank you so much for that, and actually thank you for making it extremely clear. Mr. Vikram Singh, I wanted to come to you as well. Has this, happened in the past that we've used such stringent terms, even now? And in all of the cases that we pulled out, where we were told, okay, 3 people have been nabbed or arrested, or some have been detained, there's actually not been a follow-up from the police to even tell us what charges were filed. We're still struggling to see if they've actually gone beyond filing a case of cheating or forgery or misleading people.
In your opening remarks, you mentioned that these are not ordinary criminals, they are carrion eaters. And they are extraordinary criminals that therefore need to be dealt with a very firm hand. Mr. Sundaram has very lucidly explained the various provisions of the Indian Penal Code. I would tell you there are so many statutes that can be invoked, and I have used them and have been very unsparing to such criminals with a lot of success. Prevention of Black Marketing and Maintenance of Supply of Essential Commodities Act 1980. National Security Act, Maintenance of Essential Supplies. Then UP Gangsters Act, and wherever the provisions are available, the MACOCA, Maharashtra Organized Crime Control Act, confiscation of movable and immovable property. Tanvi, where there is a will, there is a way. These criminals can have the backbones broken, literally and metaphorically, and they are finished. Their gangs are finished. But giving the due to the police, who are an elite and a very respected part of our Corona warriors, the pandemic fatigue has not spared them also. Therefore, investigation may not be the first priority, but wherever I have requested and advised, like in UP, Delhi, action has been taken, and such action has been taken. My advice again to the Delhi police officer and the lady who's present is announce heavy rewards of 5 lakhs or plus for getting information which will be kept secret, then and whatever property is confiscated should be used for the treatment of those in the ICU and getting them. Medical, you may realize that almost 5% of the essential medicine supplies and oxygen cylinders are there with the black marketers, and that's a very scary situation, Tanvi, and that needs to go to the deserving, the patients and the doctors and the hospitals, not with the black marketeers. You would also realize that they're not ordinary people, they're educated people. They have B pharmas, they have degrees of pharmacy, and they know how to manufacture spurious drugs. And the location in which in the Delhi, I would compliment S.N. Srivastava, the police commissioner, for doing what he did, getting at the base of the high-heeled scamsters in Lodi Road, which is the poshest area of one of the poshest areas of Delhi. And I'm sure the interrogation would reveal the nexus of the high and the mighty, the farmhouses, etc. Therefore, it is not just an ordinary crime that we need to only deal with the surface. We need to go deeper into the malice and the problem, and interrogation of every suspect and the accused would reveal the deep nexus of the high-heeled, the high and the mighty, and those who are wealthy and those who have arrived. Tanvi, needs to be investigated on a priority. Even if it is just around 4 to 5%, it is a very high figure and can be better utilized in the service of the patients and those who are deserving, the doctors and the nursing homes. Tanvi.
Absolutely. In fact, let me also bring in Monica Bharadwaj, DCP for the Delhi Crime Branch, joining us right now. And Monica Bharadwaj, I know that you were personally involved and part of the team that carried out a crackdown on a fake remdesivir factory. Now, the question I want to ask you is, how easy or difficult is it for the policing authorities in times of a pandemic to actually carry out such operations and crack down? Can we see more of this being done easily?
Since the time this pandemic has begun, we started getting some complaints. Since remdesivir was earlier, there were some shortages reported. So we started working on the black marketing aspect of it. And then when we came across this COVID-pre, one remdesivir was in the market and in large numbers. When we started investigating that case, initially it was just a black marketing case for us. But then we realized that actually there is no such brand name COVID-pre by which any remdesivir is being manufactured. So then it became a very, very sensitive issue for us, because it was not any other fake product. Basically, it can lead to life being lost if a fake medicine is in the market, and that too in such crucial times. So taking it very seriously, we went till the end, and we finally reached the place where it was actually manufactured. It was not manufactured as such, antibiotics were renamed as remdesivir and being sold in the market. So from our end, we have been in all such cases taking it very, very sensitively. We have been trying to go till the source, till the last point. Actually, who is the person behind it? That kind of thing we have been doing since the beginning itself. And as you said, that it may be difficult for the police because we have a lot on our hands. There is this lockdown implementation is there, that we have to do all miscellaneous type of duties also. Earlier there were issues with oxygen supply, so we have to coordinate that also. Plus, of course, there were issues with the staff was getting sick as well because they have this whole lot of exposure. But still, Delhi police has been able to hold their stuff together, and they've been doing some good work in this respect, and that gives a lot of satisfaction to us actually.
One part that you explained to us, which is great, is that how you managed to track down, go right till the end, you went all the way to Uttarakhand to crack down on this factory that was in the name of remdesivir. Imagine a drug for which people are running from one corner of the earth to the other, are willing to pay whatever price they can, empty out their bank accounts if needed, because the doctors would have asked them for this drug and they need to get it. And people are making fake drugs and selling it. That's one aspect, Monica Bharadwaj. The other one would be, ma'am, of how do you prosecute them? What charges do you book them under? How do you now ensure that they get the strictest punishment? So what was then after you did this crackdown?
See, as I said, in every aspect we have been looking into, whether it is the fake medicine that they are selling, the fake oxygen cylinders, like fire extinguisher being sold as oxygen cylinders, or people being cheated in the name of providing some medicine or cylinders. So every on case to case, where we have close to 3 dozen cases where this medicine was either black marketed or sold at a high price, and we have around 200 cases of this cyber frauds also we have so far registered. And we, as it was discussed by speakers before me also, we will not hesitate in applying the strictest sections also. Whatever comes in, during the investigation, we will be taking the strictest possible action. And it will be as a mission that will be taking these cases to the court so that they get the strictest punishment and they are never able to come out and take advantage of such situations in life ever again.
Okay, no, so fair enough what you're saying, and that you've done all of this crackdown. My question to you is, for example, let's take that the incident that we're talking about, where they were using fire extinguishers and selling them as oxygen cylinders. Were they booked for homicide?
See, a lot will depend upon, what we find during the investigation, whether it was actually used by someone and whether someone has lost their life. So all those aspects also we'll be looking at. And then whatever comes during investigation, we are not averse to applying homicide sections also. We are not averse to that.
Okay, let me actually take this point back to Arima Sundaram before we go across to our political representatives. Mr. Sundaram, so we take this as an example, right? And what the DCP crime is telling us, they will have to first draw the link to whom did they sell it, and whether they're able to establish if there was a death in the family. Would they have to go so far? What would your legal advice be?
Well, I'm very happy to hear Ms. Bharadwaj talking about taking this to the strictest, dealing with it in the strictest manner. And that gives us a lot of optimism. But may I take the indulgence of just saying that in my view, if a person has attempted to kill somebody, whether they have actually resulted in killing them or not, it's still an attempt to commit a culpable homicide. It's still an attempt to kill somebody. And I feel there should be an FIR should be registered for that. If the investigation thereafter shows that they did not do so, of course, then the charges will be dropped. But the fact is that if a person, you don't need the causal link to show that someone actually died. It's enough if they tried to sell a fake drug, knowing it was not the drug, knowing that by using the drug, you could die. and yet sold it. And even if the person did not use it, it's still an attempt. And therefore, I believe that the strictest provision should be incorporated when the FIR is registered itself or when the charge sheet is filed.
In fact, I will go a step further, and that's because we are right now feeling so angry, Mr. Sundaram, and I'm sure across the country, anybody who finds out about these cases feels the same amount of anger, let alone people who may have actually gone through it, and God forbid if they've actually lost somebody. But can we look at stricter laws? I mean, in our country, for the simplest of the things, we invoke the NSA Act. We talk about the NSA. We've used, Macoca in serious cases. This is as serious, as grave a crime as it gets.
It's worse. These people are hyenas. These people don't deserve to be called human beings. They are hyenas who are preying on the weakness of people around. And I believe that people like this should be immediately an FIR should be registered with the strictest of sentences. They should not be given bail, and action should be taken against them so that it will at least be a deterrent for others. And I believe that these kind of people should be put in jail and the key thrown away.
Yes, Mr. Vikram Singh, would you want to weigh in before I take it back to others as well? Even in cases where people are making you this promise, because if you promise somebody that you will give them an oxygen cylinder or an ICU bed or even remdesivir, you take 50,000 rupees to 1 lakh rupees from them and you vanish in thin air. If such people are caught, should they not be at least arrested on a non-bailable charge and, really given the strictest of the punishment?
Tanvi very appropriately put, much more than that. I have seen, and I have done that myself, that such criminals were put behind bars, they were sent to jail, and the last rites were performed in the jail itself. They never came out after that. And my advice, I would like to compliment Monica ji for the wonderful policing that she has done. And I would also advise her to invoke the provisions of the Disaster Management Act and also the Epidemic Diseases Act. The two acts are very handy and can be invoked with absolute perfection and with great and fantastic positive results.
This is exactly an appeal, and we've now got experts here as well, including legal experts. Monica Bharadwaj, we want to hear this from you. You are the senior cop serving right now, catching these criminals, tracking them down, picking them up. Can we go harder after them? It's not just about a cheating or a forgery case, or even saying, okay, let the probe show what it does, because the scam is extremely apparent.
As I said, the Disaster Management Act and Epidemics Act we have already invoked, and this is a dynamic situation as we come across the evidences and behind bar, we'll be doing it. All those things are in discussion, whether NSA also is to be applied or whether any other sections are relevant in these cases. We'll be applying all those.
Great to hear that. I hope it happens, and I'm so glad you came here and spoke to us about the cases that have been done. But I am counting on this assurance that stricter action and stricter sections will be needed. Neha Joshi, first to you and then to Adil Singh Boparai. That's the only way to go about it. And I have you as political representatives here, not because I want to question you or corner you, but because I also want the big political parties to join this and to join us in making this demand, and in their states asking the police to use the stringent of the sections, including murder, and in states where they love using the NSA, use that if you want. Where else will you use it if not here?
Thank you, Tanvi. Thank you for having me. And all the experts who spoke before me, they made it very clear that there are enough provisions in the existing laws to try these people for culpable homicide. I'm not an expert at law, but what I do see here is that, in addition to all of these sections being applied, what we need is fast-track prosecution, and the fact that these people are punished in a record time, because unless we do that, we are not going to be able to set an example, and we're not going to be able to deter people. You know, the fake remdesivir racket that Monica ji spoke about. I'm from Uttarakhand. I'm in Uttarakhand right now, and I know that was busted here. So, you know, it took some fantastic work on part of the Delhi police and the Uttarakhand police. They worked together to bust this racket. These guys had already sold more than 2,000 vials. And, you know, that figure is so dangerous because, in addition to the actual crime, Tanvi, we have to think about the hope. Remdesivir, in some cases, has given hope. This drug gives hope to a family member that the patient is going to survive. When a person buys an oxygen cylinder, a fake a carbon dioxide cylinder being sold at high prices as an oxygen cylinder, it can end up killing people. So I think, in addition to the police being vigilant in their work, which they are already doing, all of these exposés that have happened in the past few weeks has been because our police has been extremely vigilant in addition to everything else that they're doing. I think what I would advocate for, and I would also, push the government for, would be to make sure that the prosecution and the punishment is delivered in a record time so that others are deterred. Or, we will be going through this pandemic and these things are going to keep happening. So I think we need to fast track all these judgments also.
Yes, absolutely. But it begins with saying that we send out a message that, and it becomes the biggest of the problems even in black marketing cases, where you capture them, you crack down, you carry out a raid, you seize what you find there, you book them, they're in jail for 6 months, and then they're out, and then they're back into this racket doing it again. That's what needs to be stopped by sending out a strict message. Adil, what Neha was referring to, this one example in Uttarakhand where a fake remdesivir factory was busted, they had actually managed to sell 2,000 vials. I shudder to think of the families who would have bought those vials with the hope that they're going to be able to save their loved one. In Gujarat, there was a factory where people were even putting a fake brand on it. A known brand's name was being printed on it and being sold, and it's not just limited to one state. These drugs then get sold across the country, and there is no way of then tracking it back and perhaps trying to, stop people from falling into these traps.
Well, Tanvi, there is a collapse of governance in this country today. There is a collapse of healthcare system. And this vacuum, this void is being exploited by unscrupulous manufacturers and traders. There is no dearth of laws. Mr. Vikram Singh and Mr. Sundaram have very eloquently told you the legal mechanism or the legal tools which can be deployed by the police, whether it's 304 of the IPC, whether it's 420, whether it is the Essential Commodities Act, or the government of India invoking its powers under the Drug Price Control Order. There is no dearth of laws. The problem is there is dearth of intention, and there is no desire for enforcement and execution. Today, India is losing precious lives. What the law enforcement agencies need to do is they need to be vigilant. All these are offenses which are cognizable. Arrests should be made. There are syndicates which are operating. Delhi is one such state where such instances are coming to light at rapid, alarming frequency. The question is, what are the law enforcement agencies doing? If need be, rope in specialized agencies. There are payments being made electronically, rope in the ED if necessary. The question is the government of the day, is the government of India interested in cracking down? Delhi police comes under the Ministry of Home Affairs. Most of these syndicates have a foot in Delhi. That's how they are spreading their tentacles all over the country. Yes, all state governments also have to come together. This is a menace. We're in a national emergency. And we need to address this on a war footing. This is not the time for platitudes, Neha. This is not the time for mouthing homilies. This is the time to act. There is dearth of medicines, there is dearth of oxygen, there are logistical
I understand what you're
the
saying, but Adil, this can't be just a BJP government's responsibility, right? This is also in every state. Each state and its law and order machinery, each state's police will have to crack down on it.
I will back up what I'm saying. The Supreme Court of this country has said that ensuring supply and allocation of oxygen is the responsibility of the central government. If there is black marketing happening, that means there is some short supply somewhere. It gives an opportunity for these unscrupulous traders to exploit our countrymen. The government of India has to play a preeminent role. Yes, state governments must do their bit. I'm not running away from that. Of course, law and order comes under the state government. But the government of the day needs to be proactive. The central government needs to be proactive. There is the drug price control order. There is the Essential Commodities Act.
In every state,
Respond, please.
in every state, this is the situation right now. Are you telling me in states across, different, governed by different political parties, where beds are being sold at exorbitant prices? And that is the reality in many of our cities right now. Are you telling me all of that is because one BJP government at the center didn't plan? Which of the state governments have? When you were in power, what did you do for healthcare infrastructure to today turn around and say this, Adil? I am simply saying I don't want to get into a political fight right now. This is not that they didn't do the job, but you did. It's all the same. We need to come together and ensure that our law enforcement authorities understand what action is required of them right now.
Hear me out. Under the drug price control order, it is the Department of Pharmaceutical which needs to come in, which needs to kick in. The central government certainly has more powers than the state governments. There is a reason why we have one central government and 29 state governments.
Tanvi, can I respond, please?
There are several instances, there are syndicates which are operating out of Delhi. It is the MHA which operates in Delhi. I am not saying that the state government should not do their role, should not play their role, but the central government needs to act more. It has preeminent and certainly more powers in its arsenal. We have to come together. We have to come together as Team India. But is the focus there? Is the government of India focusing on tackling the crisis? Today there is a collapse, Tanvi. Please put your hand on your heart. There is a collapse.
Let me get in Neha Joshi. Let me get in Neha Joshi, and I want to stay specifically on the topic we are discussing tonight, Adil. The collapse of governance as a general statement is not what we are discussing tonight. Neha Joshi.
This is all interlinked, Tanvi. This is all interlinked. You can't see it in silos.
Mr. Bopara, Tanvi asked me a question. Let me answer it. I think you have your turn.
You can't see it in silos. There is a comprehensive problem which needs a comprehensive toolkit.
Tanvi, I'm not going to speak over him. You'll have to ask him to shut up.
Okay, Neha Joshi. Neha Joshi.
Please
Yes.
mind your language, Miss Neha Joshi. Please mind your language.
May I,
Please use parliamentary language.
Tanvi, the last thing, I would urge my esteemed colleague from the Congress party that the last thing I or anyone else should be doing right now is to question the intent and efforts of our law enforcement machinery. The fact that Monica ji is represented here on this panel today and the exemplary work that the police is doing. This pandemic, Tanvi, has brought out the best and the worst in us. Some of us are working day and night to, there are 18-year-olds, there are 80-year-olds trying to collate resources, trying to help people, trying to augment the healthcare infrastructure, which is under tremendous pressure right now. And then there are elements, that like Mr. Boparai mentioned, who are trying to take advantage of this situation. That has nothing to do with the government machinery. The fact that all of these people have been caught, the fact that all of these people have already been booked shows that our law enforcement agencies are vigilant. And, because we are talking about, generic statements that Mr. Boparai is making, there are non-profit organizations, civil society organizations also, that in the name of helping people are actually hoarding stuff, may actually be enabling this kind of black marketing. One Congress leader, Mr. Vijendra Mavi,
Yes.
that Mr. Boparai might be familiar with, he was today caught with a whole consignment. People are struggling to find cylinders. And this Congress leader was found hoarding cylinders, which they were probably distributing as aid. Should this be permitted, Mr. Boparai? And which section should he be tried under? So please, let's not make generic statements. Like Tanvi said, we need to stand together. This is a crisis that the whole country is facing, not the BJP, not just the central government, not just any state government. The law enforcement agencies are doing their job. Let's support them. Let's not come on, national television and make these generic statements, because your
politicians and political parties to tell me tonight of how they are going to pitch into this. Rather than saying the law enforcement agencies are doing a great job and let them do their job, I want each one of us, just like how we are flagging off and helping and amplifying voices who need help, we need to amplify those who've been duped. We need to amplify the information about those who are trying to cheat, who are actually trying to scam and loot the money on the basis with the promise of oxygen and remdesivir and providing them fake oxygen. That's not all. In fact, it's worse than that. And what we have seen, in fact, in this case is that in one example, people were giving out fake COVID tests. I say good evening to Yashovardhan Azad at this point. Yashovardhan Azad, what should be the punishment for people working in a lab who are not even testing the samples but giving it out as fake COVID test report, lying about a COVID test report?
I think the strongest measures should be used against them. In fact, what is NSA for? This is against national security. This is against the integrity of the nation. And that's why the strongest possible penal action should be taken against these people. But let me tell you something. I was looking through the arguments and the lineup given by the various speakers. You know, Mr. Vikram Singh and my friend Aryama have given a lot of penal action which can be taken. But what is also required is a kind of a different approach to this now. This is a time to constitute a national task force. Somebody under Gadkari, which has Devi Shetty as the head, which appears unbiased, because then all the states will come together and do something about it. Look at the system today in the various states. They are there. Everything is under a health secretary. A health secretary lords over all the transfers. Health secretary, allocates funds. He does everything. Obviously, they have been proved incapable, because in September or October, it was very clear that the Parliamentary Standing Committee even said that oxygen is less, beds are less, ICU things are left. So today is a time how you're going to ramp up these things. Grandstanding and only criticizing either the central government, as you're very right, or the state governments will not make a difference. Look at what High Court has said about Bihar. In Madhya Pradesh, which is my cadre, there are people ringing me up, and your channel showed how the Jhola Chhap doctors are keeping the patients on the ground, and where drips are hanging from the trees. So it's a question of actual shortage. Now, in a question of shortage, the best and the worst, as Neha said, of humanity comes out. And this is exactly what is happening today. In Delhi, for example, if the Delhi government says it requires 976 MT, and BJP wants an audit even on 730, then obviously it's going to be a huge problem. Where is the collaboration? There's no collaboration at all in these things. Who's going to hoard oxygen? They are not going to hoard or anything like that. And as far as the police is concerned, my final thing is the police is on various fronts, fighting on various fronts. Now, at least, let's not demoralize them. They are helping in cremations, mind you. They are helping in supplies, green corridor, catching these fake cylinders. So this is not a time for incriminations of this kind. And I must say that if a national task force comes together, you can immediately see the results, and have somebody like Devi Shetty or somebody who should be the head of it, and immediately the country will feel, yes, it's an unbiased team, and it will give us results.
Absolutely. And as we speak, I've got now comments coming in from Uttar Pradesh's ADG Law and Order, Mr. Prashant Kumar, who's now given us details of the crackdown that's happened in Uttar Pradesh. And I'm just putting out this information to give our viewers the extent of the problem. 117 people have been arrested for black marketing. 117 people have been arrested for black marketing. 1,082 life-saving injections, 1,263 oxygen cylinders, 818 oximeters have been seized. Across the state, the crackdown that they have done just on black marketing. There are reports coming out of how then these cylinders were being used with fake receipts. God only knows what was being put in these cylinders and were being given out. Here is another example that I have from Maharashtra. In Maharashtra, one person filed a complaint when she figured that her COVID test report that had been given had an error. An investigation led to a fact that this one lab technician had given fake test reports to 37 people, had simply picked up older test reports, used those PDF files, changed some details and given it out. Now imagine if you give a fake COVID negative report to somebody and they go about their lives as if everything is normal. How many more people do they expose the infection to? How many more lives are put at risk? Even if they have symptoms, they don't act upon it, assuming that it's basic flu because their COVID test report has come out negative. In such a scenario, Mr. Vikram Singh, what should be the response of the police authorities? What is this man supposed to be booked for and jailed for?
Exemplary and deterrent punishment, as Prashant Kumar has done. And I feel that Maharashtra has also done, as Mr. Azad has rightfully mentioned, that the police have their hands full and what they are doing is indeed worthy of the salute of the nation. And the grateful nation is saluting the police. But yes, Tanvi, exemplary and deterrent punishment and all the provisions. As I said before, and Mr. Azad also reiterated that the provision of National Security Acts, the last section, subclause 3, essential supplies. And under these, 12 months are there. And wherever the provisions do exist as the Gangsters Act and the Makoka, confiscation of movable and immovable property also should be ensured. And my advice to several DGs has been that this confiscated property should be confiscated and used for the treatment of those in the ICU and those who have been cheated. Exemplary action and a deterrent action needs to be taken. All the provisions, all the engines need to be fired in one go so that a loud and clear message goes that the law is unsparing and an action that your generations would remember would be taken against the criminals and the mafia. Tanvi.
I mean, imagine this, Mr. R.M. Sundaram, 1,200 oxygen cylinders, 1,263 oxygen cylinders recovered in this crackdown by one state police. And if that is the scenario in every state, the number of lives which can be saved if we actually put these people behind bars. And now I come to you specifically about black marketing and hoarding, especially when a disaster management act is in place and these are essential drugs or life-saving equipment that we are talking about. Again, I feel there, Mr. Sundaram, irrespective of what we can do on ground, we do end up using weaker sections and these guys are out from jail in a couple of months.
Well, Tanvi, I think let's not prejudge what is going to happen in this situation. I do know that in the past there have been instances, many instances, where people who should have been booked for much more serious offenses have been let off, they've come out on bail, all that has happened. But what we have seen today, both from what Ms. Bharadwaj said and from such eminent ex-policemen like Mr. Azad and Mr. Vikram Singh, that they have full confidence that the police are acting now. Now, the point is, as you have heard time and again from all of us, there are sections of plenty. There are sections of plenty under which these people can be booked, which are deterrent, which are very serious, which are non-bailable. Our hope is that these will be used. But seeing how the police themselves are taking this on so strongly, especially from what you have just pointed out, has come from Uttar Pradesh now. Don't forget that that was great investigative work that so quickly they were able to arrest so many people. Now, I believe we should have faith in the police and believe that the police are also seeing this with the same severity, the same seriousness that we all are seeing it, and will book these people with the most stringent provisions. As to what those provisions are, you have heard from all of us, and there are plenty of them. And I am an optimist in that.
Yes.
And I do believe, especially after hearing Ms. Bharadwaj, after hearing what you said has been done in Uttar Pradesh right now, I am optimistic and I do believe that the police, if allowed to do their job, will do so. And I have full faith in it.
Yes, no, absolutely. I'm not here, and neither do we have any other reason to question, whether enough action is being taken. I'm just trying to understand and explain to our viewers the gravity and the extent of the black marketing and the hoarding and the rampant extortion that is taking place for every single thing in our country across cities. I know stories from my own circles in Maharashtra. We have now reported a massive bed allocation scam that allegedly took place in Bengaluru, across multiple civic bodies and across war rooms, where people who are supposed to be allocating beds to you are charging you 1 lakh rupees. In other places, there are rate cards which are functioning about if you need a bed in a certain kind of hospital, you have to pay 1 lakh rupees, 1.5 lakh rupees. Oxygen cylinders, even in states like Bihar, which are supposed to be sold at a price of 9,000 rupees, are being sold for 25,000 rupees, state after state after state. And I think because this news and this information gets lost in all of the other COVID-related stories that we cover, the gravity of it together isn't coming through, of just how big a problem it has become when every single family is fighting for a oxygen cylinder in a city. To have them being hoarded, black marketed, or to have fire extinguishers being sold as oxygen cylinders is just unimaginable that they should be let off or not punished. Let me bring in one of our viewers on the phone line. Mr. Arjun Jain is on the phone line. He's actually calling us from Delhi, so I'm sure he's very well aware of what the situation in that city is. Mr. Jain, what's your view?
Good evening, ma'am. I heard a wonderful view of all your panelists. I'm delighted to hear, and they express their views, and I totally agree with all their views. And in my view also, the strictest action should be taken against the culprits for giving fake drugs and fake cylinders. And I congratulate you and your panelists for this wonderful session. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Jain, for calling, and thank you for also, joining us in, raising this demand that there needs to be stricter action when the options are there within our legal penal system. Arthur on the phone line. And before I go back to our panelists, Arthur on the phone line from Bengaluru. Good evening. What would you like to say? Okay, we seem to have lost that line with Arthur, who was calling us from Bengaluru. We're going to go back to him in just a bit. But let me just give you one more example. In cities like Chandigarh, whereas we've seen large number of cases being reported, again a similar remdesivir black marketing racket was busted. And it was a multi-state racket, not just in one city, but they were actually selling off these at high exorbitant price. A 12,000 per vial price is being sold for 30,000 rupees bare minimum across Haryana. Imagine that. Imagine these people whose first thought in the middle of a pandemic is to say, how can we make money out of it? How can we generate fake receipts? How can we generate fake test reports? How can we give fake cylinders? How can we just start off a simple SMS scam, pretending to be volunteers, offering people a help that is needed in desperate times, and take their money and run away without giving them any kind of help? It is pitiful and shocking that this is going on in our country. I'm going to thank all of our panelists for joining us on this conversation. I wanted to just say that Arthur was on the phone line and we lost that connection. Actually wanted to talk about saying that we need a crackdown at the grassroots level to probe the bigger nexus. This is a viewer calling us from Bengaluru, who from the city where a massive bed allocation scam is currently under investigation. And in 2 different kinds of cases, people have been arrested. Agents who are selling beds for COVID treatment right now. We had viewers coming in, calling us from Mumbai, saying strict punishment is needed. Veera Anthony was on the phone line to say strict punishment is needed. We had Mr. Rajendra Sharma calling us from Jaipur, again from where massive news of black marketing has come through, saying let the army take over. We had Joseph, who also called from Bengaluru, emerged a few weeks ago, that Joseph remembers, where in a lab, people were sitting, using the swabs, putting false samples and sending them off for testing. Negative test reports, that's how they are generated in our country. All of these people, all of these criminals and scamsters need to be permanently put behind bars. And some of them who cheated us for life-saving healthcare system must be prosecuted for murder, if nothing more. If not under NSA or MACOCA, at least for homicide. Thank you for joining us.